The golden ships descended through the clouds of prime like falling stars. Thousands of citizens gathered in the great plaza, their tall blue-skinned bodies pressed together as they watched the sky. Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Elders who had not left their homes in decades stood at the front of the crowd. Everyone wanted to see him. Everyone wanted to see the hero. Commander stepped off his ship and felt the ground of his beneath his feet for the first time in 15 years. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud that the sound echoed off the crystal towers of the capital city. Flowers rained down from balconies. Musicians played ancient songs of victory. Young females threw tokens of admiration at his feet. Stood still and let it wash over him. He was tall even for a with dark blue skin marked by the silver scars of countless battles. His 4 eyes, arranged in pairs above and below each other, scanned the crowd with an expression that none of them could read. They saw a hero. They saw the savior of the empire. They did not see what lived behind those eyes. The High Council waited for him at the top of the ceremonial stairs. 7 ancient in robes of pure white, their faces carved with the wisdom of 800 years each. The eldest among them, Counselor, stepped forward and placed a medallion around his neck. It was the star of the highest honor any citizen could receive. Only 11 had been given in the entire history of the empire. Commander announced, his voice amplified across the plaza, "You have broken the Dominion's advance. You have liberated 47 worlds. You have saved the empire from destruction. We honor you this day and for all days to come." The crowd cheered again, bowed his head in respect, but he did not smile. He had not smiled in a very long time. The celebration continued through the day and into the night. There was food and music and dancing. Young officers surrounded wherever he went, eager to hear stories of his campaigns. They wanted to know his secrets. They wanted to learn how to become heroes themselves. A young officer named pushed his way to the front of the group. He was barely past his first century, his skin still the light blue of youth. His eyes shone with admiration as he looked at. Commander said, "Please tell us, how did you defeat the Dominion at the Burning Reach? Our instructors say it was impossible. They say no fleet could have survived that battle." Looked at the young officer for a long moment. Around them, the other officers fell silent, waiting for the hero to speak. Took a drink from his cup and set it down slowly. "You want to know my secret," said. His voice was deep and rough, damaged by years of breathing recycled ship air and shouting orders over the sounds of battle. "Yes, Commander," said eagerly. "Please teach us." Nodded slowly. He looked around at all the young faces staring at him. They were so eager, so innocent. They had never seen what he had seen. They had never lost what he had lost. "I won my battles," said, "because of humans." The silence that followed was complete. The young officers looked at each other in confusion. Some of them laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. The smile faded as he realized the commander was serious. "Humans," another officer said, "the primitive species from the outer systems, the ones who live barely 100 years. "Yes," said, "those humans." "But Commander," said carefully, "they are nothing special, they are weak, they are short-lived. Their technology is generations behind ours. What could they possibly have taught you?" Stood up from his seat. He was so tall that the young officers had to look up at him. His silver scars caught the light of the moons overhead. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but somehow everyone in the plaza could hear him. "I have fought beside humans for 15 years, said. "I have watched them live and die. I have seen them do things that should be impossible. And I am telling you now, all of you, that everything you think you know about them is wrong." He looked out at the crowd that had gathered around them. The music had stopped. The dancing had stopped. Everyone was listening. "You think they are superior," continued. "You think our long lives and our ancient wisdom make us the greatest species in the galaxy. I believed this too once, before the war, before I met them." An elder in the crowd spoke up. Commander, surely you exaggerate. Humans are useful as laborers and mercenaries, nothing more. They breed quickly and die quickly. They are tools. Turned to face the elder, his 4 eyes narrowed. Tools, he repeated. Is that what you think? Then let me tell you stories. Let me tell you what I have seen with my own eyes. And when I am finished, you will understand why I stand here today and why so many better soldiers than me do not. He sat back down and refilled his cup. The crowd pressed closer, drawn by something in his voice. Even the High Council members had turned to listen. I will tell you about humans, said, and when I am done, you will never think of them the same way again. I promise you that. The night grew darker around them, but no one moved to leave. They waited for the hero to speak, and who had seen too much and lost too many began to tell them the truth. Closed his eyes and let the memories come back. Even now, years later, he could still smell the burning metal and taste the ash in the air. The Siege of 7 had been the beginning of everything. My fleet was dying, began. We had been fighting for 3 months without resupply. Our food was gone. Our medicine was gone. Half my ships were floating wreckage. The Dominion had us trapped in the system with no way out. The young officers leaned forward. They had heard stories of 7, but never from someone who had been there. I sent out a distress call, continued. I did not expect anyone to answer. We were deep in enemy territory. Any ship that came to help us would be walking into a trap, but someone did answer. A small human trading vessel that had been caught behind enemy lines. He remembered the first time he saw her face on his communication screen. A human female with short black hair and tired eyes. She had introduced herself as captain. I told her to run, said. I told her that coming to us meant death. She looked at me through the screen and asked me how many of my crew were wounded. When I told her the number, she said she was on her way. I asked her why she would risk her life for strangers. Do you know what she said? The crowd was silent. She said, because you need help. Nothing more. No talk of payment or reward, no calculation of risk, just 4 words. Ship arrived 2 days later. It was a small vessel with barely enough room for her crew of 20 humans. They brought food, medicine, and something even more valuable, hope. The Dominion attacked the next morning, said. They sent ground forces to finish us off while their ships kept us pinned in orbit. We had to fight on the surface of 7, a poisonous world with toxic air and acid rain. My soldiers lasted hours before the toxins started killing them. We wore breathing masks, but the poison seeped through our skin, began dying by the dozen. He paused and looked at his own hands. He remembered how they had turned gray from the poison, how every breath had felt like swallowing fire. The humans kept fighting. The same air that was killing us they breathed through simple filters. The same rain that burned our skin they walked through with nothing but thin suits. I watched a human soldier named Carrie wounded to safety through a river of toxic sludge. The poison was eating through his suit. His skin was burning, and he kept going back for more. Interrupted, how is that possible? Humans are supposed to be fragile. Laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fragile? Let me tell you about fragile. I watched work on our wounded for 42 hours without rest. 42 hours. When I ordered him to sleep, he told me there were still patients who needed him. He kept working until the last wounded soldier was stable. Then he collapsed. His body simply stopped. We thought he was dead. The crowd held its breath. He woke up 8 hours later and asked if anyone else needed help. Stood and began to pace. The memories were coming faster now, harder to control. We call humans short-lived, he said. We pity them for their brief existence, but we do not understand what that means. Humans do not give up because they know their time is limited. Every moment matters to them. Every life matters. They fight as if death is just another enemy to defeat, not an inevitable end. He told them about the 3rd day of the siege, when the Dominion sent their elite soldiers to finish the job. Warriors fell by the hundreds. The defensive line was about to break. A human woman named was guarding the eastern approach with 5 other humans, said. They were outnumbered 20-1. I sent a message ordering them to retreat. His response was one word: no. His voice grew quiet. They held that approach for 9 hours. 9 hours against impossible odds. When reinforcements finally arrived, Only was still standing. She had taken 7 wounds that would have killed any. 7 wounds. She was still firing her weapon when we reached her. When we tried to take her to the medical bay, she refused until all the wounded were treated first. The young officers were no longer smiling. Their faces were pale with something that might have been shame. There is a human word that has no translation in our language, said. The word is spite. It means refusing to lose even when losing is certain. It means fighting harder when everything tells you to give up. Humans are full of spite. It burns in them like a fire that nothing can put out. He sat back down heavily. We won the siege of 7 because of human spite. We survived because humans decided we were worth saving. And I learned that day that living for 500 years means nothing if you do not have something worth dying for. The plaza was completely silent. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called out, but no one moved. No one spoke. They were all thinking about what it meant to fight like you had nothing to lose. Picked up his cup again. That was the first lesson humans taught me, he said. Tomorrow I will tell you the second. The next evening, the crowd in the great plaza was even larger. Word had spread throughout the capital about the heroes' strange stories. Citizens who had never cared about the war stood shoulder to shoulder with veterans. The High Council attended in full, their white robes bright against the gathering darkness. Everyone wanted to hear more about the humans. Arrived as the suns were setting. He looked tired, as if the memories he was sharing cost him something each time he spoke them. He sat in the same chair as the night before and waited for silence. The second lesson, he began without greeting, I learned aboard my own flagship, the Battle of the Ember Corridor. Several of the older officers nodded. They knew the battle by name. It was studied in military academies as an example of how to survive an impossible situation, but they had never heard what really happened. The Dominion ambushed us in the corridor, said. They had twice our numbers and better positioning. Within the first hour, half my fleet was destroyed. My flagship was boarded by Dominion shock troops, hundreds of them pouring through breaches in the hull. He paused and looked at his hands. I had 12 humans aboard my ship, just 12. They were a small security team that had joined us after 7. Their leader was a man named. Smiled slightly at the memory. It was the first time the crowd had seen him smile. Was not a large man. He was actually small for a human, but he had eyes that made you want to follow him. When the Dominion boarded us, I ordered all non-essential crew to the escape pods. The humans were supposed to go with them. He shook his head slowly. They refused. All 12 of them refused. I found standing at the entrance to the main corridor with his team. He was checking his weapon like he was preparing for a training exercise, not a suicide mission. Stood up, his voice growing stronger as he relived the moment. I ordered him to leave. I told him this was not his fight. I told him that humans had already done enough for us and that they did not need to die on a ship. Do you know what he said? The crowd was silent. He said, Commander, we have eaten at your table. We have fought at your side. We have buried our dead next to yours. That makes us family. And we do not leave family behind. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Family, the humans had known my crew for less than a year. In terms, that is nothing. That is the blink of an eye. We do not form deep bonds in such short time. We cannot. But humans can. Humans must because they do not have the luxury of waiting. He told them about the battle that followed. 200 Dominion shock troops against 12 humans. The corridor was narrow, which helped, but the odds were still impossible. Placed his team in a defensive formation, said. He put the best shooters in front and the wounded in back. A human woman named was already bleeding from a wound in her side. She refused to leave. A man named had a broken arm. He held his weapon with one hand and kept firing. The first wave of Dominion troops came, then the second, then the third. Each time the humans held their ground. I watched them through the security cameras, said. I watched humans die one by one. Each time one fell, the others would pull them back and continue fighting. They did not scream. They did not panic. They just kept fighting. After 3 hours, only 6 humans remained. After 5 hours, only 4. After 6 hours, when reinforcements finally broke through, only 3 humans were still alive. Was one of them, said. He had been shot twice and stabbed once. He could barely stand. But when I reached the corridor, he was still holding his weapon, still protecting the corridor, still refusing to give up. Turned to face the High Council directly. 173 Dominion soldiers died in that corridor. 12 humans killed 173 elite troops. When I asked how they did it, he said it was simple. He said they were fighting for each other, not for victory. Each of them would rather die than let their friends die alone. Counselor spoke up. But Commander, we also fight for each other. We fight for our empire, our honor, our duty. Shook his head. No, Counselor, we fight for ideas, duty, honor, empire. These are words. They are important words, but they are still just words. Humans do not fight for words. They fight for people. They fight for the person standing next to them. They fight so that their friend might live one more day. He pointed at the young officers in the crowd. If you were dying on a battlefield, would you want someone beside you who was fighting for the glory of the empire? Or would you want someone who was fighting because they loved you and refused to let you die alone? No one answered. No one needed to. That is the second lesson humans taught me, said quietly. Love is stronger than duty. Loyalty to people is stronger than loyalty to ideas. And 12 humans who fought for each other were worth more than 1,000 soldiers who fought for glory. He sat back down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, I will tell you the third lesson, and then you will understand everything. By the third night, the great plaza could not hold everyone who wanted to listen. Citizens stood on rooftops and hung from windows. The story of Commander and his humans had spread across the entire planet. Even children too young to understand war stayed awake to hear the hero speak. Arrived later than usual. He walked slowly through the crowd and people noticed that he carried something in his hand. It was a small metal object, scratched and burned. He held it carefully like it was precious. When he reached his chair, he sat down and placed the object on the table in front of him. It was a human tool, some kind of calculating device. The screen was cracked and dark. This belonged to a human engineer named, said. She gave it to me before she died. She said it had helped her solve the impossible, and maybe it would help me too. He touched the device gently. The third lesson I will tell you is about creativity, about thinking in ways that should not be possible, about solving problems that have no solutions. He leaned back and began his story. Station was the key to the entire Ember corridor. Whoever controlled the supply lines for half the sector. The Dominion knew this. They turned the station into a fortress. Automated defense systems, energy shields, minefields. They had over 5,000 troops stationed there. The military officers in the crowd nodded. They knew about. In the academies, it was used as an example of a target that could not be attacked. Our admirals studied for months, continued. They ran thousands of simulations. Every approach led to the same result, total destruction of the attacking fleet. The station was simply too well defended. Some said we should go around it. Others said we should wait for better weapons. Everyone agreed on one thing: direct assault was suicide. He smiled grimly. Then I asked for her opinion. Had been a small woman with messy hair and eyes that always seemed to be looking at something no one else could see. She spent most of her time in the engine room, talking to herself and drawing strange diagrams. Many of the crew thought she was slightly crazy. They were probably right. Studied the defenses for one day, said. Just one day. Then she came to my office with a plan. When I heard it, I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. She did not laugh back. He stood up and began to draw in the air with his hands, showing the crowd what had shown him. She wanted to hollow out an asteroid, a real asteroid 300 meters across. She wanted to put soldiers inside it, seal them in, and push the asteroid toward the station. The Dominion's gravity wells would pull it in like any other space debris. By the time they realized what was happening, the asteroid would crash into the main docking bay. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Even the High Council members looked shocked. I told her it was the most ridiculous plan I had ever heard, admitted. I told her that no sane species would ever consider such a thing. She looked at me and said, "That is exactly why it will work." He let that sink in. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill them. Every day was a fight for survival. They had predators with sharper teeth, faster legs, stronger bodies. They should have died out millions of years ago, but they did not. Do you know why? Spoke up from the crowd. Their brains. Their madness, corrected. Humans learned that the crazy solution is sometimes the only solution. When you are weak and small and everything is trying to eat you, you cannot play by normal rules. You have to think sideways. You have to do the thing that no one expects because no one expects it. He told them about the preparation. 300 human volunteers sealed themselves inside a hollowed-out asteroid. They had 4 hours of air, no weapons that could be detected, and only their hands and basic tools. If the plan failed, they would die slowly in the dark. I watched from my ship as the asteroid drifted toward, said. The Dominion scanners passed over it a dozen times. They saw nothing but rock. Why would they? Who would be stupid enough to ride inside an asteroid? The gravity wells caught the asteroid right on schedule. It accelerated toward the station, just another piece of space debris. At the last moment, the humans inside detonated small charges and blew open the front of the rock. 300 soldiers poured into the docking bay before the Dominion knew what was happening. The battle lasted 4 hours, said. 300 humans against 5,000 Dominion troops. They took the station. They actually took it. He picked up his device again. Was one of the first through the breach. She led her team to the station's control center and shut down the defense systems. That let the rest of our fleet move in. Without her plan, without her beautiful, insane plan, we would still be trying to figure out how to capture. His voice grew soft. She died in that control center. A Dominion soldier shot her in the back while she was disabling the last defense grid. She finished her work before she bled out. She saved the mission. She saved us all. Held up the broken device. This was in her hand when we found her. She had used it to calculate the trajectory of the asteroid, the exact timing of the charges, the precise moment to breach. All of it was in here. All of her genius, her creativity, her beautiful human madness. He set the device down carefully. The third lesson humans taught me is that there is no such thing as impossible. There are only problems we have not been creative enough to solve. Humans do not see walls. They see doors that no one has opened yet, and they will break their hands bloody trying to open them. He looked out at the sea of blue faces watching him. Tomorrow I will tell you the final lesson, the hardest truth of all. The fourth night came with storm clouds gathering over the capital. Lightning flickered in the distance, but no one left the great plaza. The crowd was larger than ever before. Ships had arrived from other worlds carrying who wanted to hear the hero's final words. The air itself seemed heavy with waiting. Did not sit down when he arrived. He walked to the center of the plaza and stood there alone, facing the crowd. The wind pulled at his military coat. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier. Still, no one moved. I have told you 3 lessons, said, his voice cutting through the storm. Endurance, loyalty, creativity, but these are not the harsh truth. These are just examples. Tonight I will tell you what it all means, and you will not want to hear it. Thunder rolled across the sky, raised his voice. We have lived for millions of years. Our empire spans 1,000 worlds. We have seen species rise and fall like waves on the ocean. We have always believed that our long lives make us wise, that our ancient history makes us great, that we are the inheritors of the galaxy. He paused and looked directly at the High Council. We are wrong. The rain fell harder, lightning split the sky, but continued. I have spent 15 years watching humans live and die. I have seen them accomplish more in a single lifetime than we accomplish in 500 years. I have seen them love with a fire that burns brighter than our suns. I have seen them fight with a fury that makes our warriors look like children playing with toys. He pointed at the crowd. We live 5 centuries. What do we do with that time? We sit in our towers and discuss philosophy. We write poetry about ancient glories. We tell ourselves that patience is wisdom and caution is strength. And while we wait, while we think, while we discuss, the galaxy changes around us. His voice grew bitter. Humans live 100 years. 100 years. That is nothing. That is a breath. And yet they have built empires from nothing. They have solved problems we said were impossible. They have created art that makes our masterpieces look like drawings made by children. Counselor stepped forward. Commander, you speak harshly of your own people. I speak the truth, shot back. I speak what I learned in blood and fire. We are stagnant, Counselor. We have not truly changed in 1,000,000 years. We are the same who first reached the stars. But humans change faster than we can understand. Every generation of humans is different from the one before. They grow, they evolve, they become more. He walked through the crowd now, looking at individual faces. Do you know what humans say about us? They say we are like rocks, ancient, unchanging, slow. They respect our history, but they do not fear us. And they should not, because while we are debating whether to act, they are already acting. While we are planning for the next century, they are building the next decade. He stopped in front of a young female holding an infant. Your child will live 500 years, he said gently. My question is, what will that child accomplish? Will they spend centuries discussing what could be done? Or will they learn from humans and actually do something? He turned back to face the whole crowd. This is the harsh truth. Humans are not primitive. They are not weak. They are not a lesser species to be. They are the future of this galaxy. Not because they are stronger or smarter, but because they are hungry. They are desperate. They know their time is short, and so they make every moment count. The storm was directly overhead now. Rain poured down on the plaza. Lightning turned night into day for brief, brilliant moments. We have 2 choices, shouted over the thunder. We can stand beside humans as partners and learn from them. We can let their fire light our own. We can become something new, something better than we have been for 1,000,000 years. He paused. Or we can stay as we are, safe, comfortable, stagnant, and we will watch as humans rise past us. They will not conquer us. They will not destroy us. They will simply forget us. We will become a footnote in their history, an old species that once mattered. He walked back to the center of the plaza and stood straight. I am a war hero. I have won battles that should have been impossible, but I won them because of humans, because they taught me that life is precious because it ends, because they showed me that love is powerful because it is given freely, because they proved that nothing is impossible if you are willing to do what everyone says cannot be done. The rain began to slow. The thunder moved away. In the silence that followed, spoke his final words. The humans I fought with are mostly dead now. All gone. Their lives were so short, but they burned so bright. They changed me. They changed everything. And now I am asking you to be changed too. He bowed his head. Learn from them, honor them, and maybe, if we are very lucky, we can become worthy of the sacrifice they made for us. The plaza was completely silent. The only sound was the gentle dripping of rain from the crystal towers. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a young officer began to move. It was the one who had asked the first question 4 nights ago. He walked forward slowly until he stood before. Then bowed, not the shallow bow of greeting, but the deep bow of profound respect. The bow reserved for those who speak truths that change worlds. Behind him another bowed, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. The wave spread through the entire plaza until every single was bowing to the hero who had brought them the truth. Looked out at his people, his eyes wet with something that might have been rain. He thought of his human friends, of their short, bright lives, of everything they had taught him. And for the first time in 15 years, Commander smiled. The humans would not be forgotten. Their fire would live on in the hearts of the... And perhaps, just perhaps, that fire would spread until it lit the entire galaxy. The storm passed, the stars came out, and on Prime a new age began.